today, turning acceptance upside down. And so Christmas is definitely the best of times and the worst of times often for us. And so I was reading my Melody Media book the last 11 years. I was reading it in December. There's a lot of great readings. I've read ahead. If you can get it or you have it, go there for Christmas Day. There's just right up to Christmas Day. She really, I don't know, she really hits it out of the park to help us. But anyway, but I was reading on December 14th, and this whole idea, she brings up a subject that it's about clear thinking, but she's talking about how there's a part to denial that helps us. And seldom do we hear people talk about how denial can help us. But I was thinking about Christmas, and Christmas has been very difficult for me for a number of reasons of loss and stuff since 1980, my own brother dying on Christmas Day. But beyond that, over the last 10 years, things have seemed to be a little bit more manageable. And so, I count it a real privilege to talk about this today, because it certainly will come from my heart. But Melody Beatty is talking about how she talks about, first of all, she says about clear thinking, we need to lose faith in denial, right? We can't trust it, but there's a time and leading up to, sometimes I believe around Christmas, there's some things that we just need not to have as expectations. There's things that we need to be able to set aside and say, you know what, this is not a good time to think about this. And so partially this idea of acceptance comes out of a few things around what she says here clearly. She says, we need to lose faith in denial. Denial is a shock absorber for the soul. And I was like, wow, you mentioned soul, I'm in. Like, I like to know more. And so it protects us until we are equipped to cope with reality. And I find at Christmas time, a lot of times, a lot of different things happen within family and historical family relationships or neighbors or relationships, period, that this is very true. And so what, just for the sake of, John and I both drove transport, and we know quite well about suspension systems on heavy trucks, heavy vehicles. And way back when I drove, I'm much older than John, we had leaf springs. And it was only in the 70s and the 80s when we started to have what they called air ride. And so these things, when you go down, you see this huge transport in front of you on the 401 or something, and you see it just sort of floating there. Well, that's air ride. And what it does is it absorbs so that the truck doesn't take as much punishment, and the truck lasts longer, and the load is not moved around and whatnot. And I thought, okay, so there's a way to describe, a shock absorber for the soul. Is like just having a few moments where we don't forget, but we actually put in our clear thinking aside things and say, this isn't really the time. She goes on and explains it this way too. She says, clear thinking is when we briefly, is a first step to acceptance. And that's what grabbed me. It's the first step to acceptance. When we start being able to say, I know I'm in denial, but for right now, it's a step to just say, I'm going to leave it there and sometime come back to that. I think at seasons like this, it's really important for us to be able to do this. So not just so that we can enjoy Christmas per se, to enjoy it, but so that we're not bent out of shape again. Most of our lives, we will strive with accepting things. That's really why I'm talking about turning acceptance upside down, because I believe our higher power did that. And I believe that's what Christmas is really all about. And so we're going to get there in a moment. Clear thinking means that we don't immerse ourselves into, she says, immerse ourselves into negative and unrealistic expectations. And what it also means is, especially at all times, as people that are working recovery, we need to stay connected with people of like-mindedness that are living that out in their own life, working out how they're going to live in their recovery together. So how good are you accepting gifts? I know for me, that's been, through the years, it's been a problem. I love to give gifts. I find it very good to give gifts. I like it. It's very good. And I'm not very good at actually giving myself gifts or actually receiving them. I mean, I'm not shy, but I'm just like, okay, no, you shouldn't have, and I'm grateful. I don't want to seem ingenuous, but I really, it's a little awkward. I don't need anything, right? I really, I've been in a process for a number of years of looking at minimalists, and living with a lot less, right? I'm in a big, right now at these moments, I'm really in a big, bringing it all down again to less. And, but I found out about minimalists that often they have a history of either being raised around addiction or being addicts themselves, or codependents or whatever. And what's interesting about that is that the whole idea of breaking down your life so you have less things makes it easier to cope, because things like that make expectations for you. Anyway, it's really off subject, but anyway. So are you a shaker? Like when you get a gift, I can see John as being somebody that has like, he must shake things or want to see if there's noise when you shake it. Are you a shaker when you receive a gift? Are you, you can't wait. I had one of my children that the calmest, nicest, no, my kids are nice, but my oldest, that like, he got up in the middle of the night and went out and sat, beside the gifts and experienced that. And so that was the way he was when he was young. He's not like that now, but are you, you can't wait. You can't wait for a gift. Or do you often feel not worthy of a gift? Or do you feel like you've never received any good gifts? I mean, these are all things about how we accept. I already mentioned that I just much rather just give gifts. I'm not saying that in a boastful way. That's how it goes for me. You might have difficulty with acceptance if you look at the way you receive and give gifts. A transaction is not a gift when it's like, well, I have to give somebody something so that I receive something in return. Christmas is the best and worst of times, and for dozens of reasons. But I wanted to look now at how God came as a gift, and a little bit about, I think, I pick up in my own life about how he did this. So, we like to accept gifts usually from people that understand us. We like to accept gifts normally by people, they mean more if we know that person really loves us. We like to receive gifts. But if it's somebody with a lot of money, this may be me, I still am grateful and thankful. But really, when it's somebody that has vulnerability, when it's somebody that has shared in brokenness, man, those gifts, they're a whole different way of acceptance. I see that our higher power, I see that God had this plan to send this gift, Jesus, to the world. And while people expected a king and powerful, an army leader, and all they had in their history is that they were going to win. this one race was going to be the only race that mattered, and no one else would ever defeat them again, and they'd have their streets of gold and all this stuff. But I read and I heard the other day in a documentary, one of these minimalists were talking, and he said, you can never get enough of what you really don't want. And as addicts, I think that is like something we know, that we understand. You can never get enough of what you really don't want. And that's kind of what the people that were expecting the king and the power and the authority all thought was going to happen, right? They'd get exactly what they wanted, but they didn't. We need to use the shock absorber maybe to process that, is that they didn't get that. They actually got completely the opposite of that. So what accepting the gift of Jesus looks like, well, he was very much wrapped up in vulnerability. And this accepting him was very much upside down. So right from the get-go, he's coming and he's still on the donkey with his mom and not delivered yet. And everybody's vulnerable here. And it's interesting that they're going where they're going because to pay their taxes, right? To pay the man. Anyway, and here he is, and he's not given anywhere to be born inside other than a stable. Wow. Everything about these next few comments is all about how whatever our stories are, it couldn't be this bad, but we're identifying a gift that's being given in a way, in the most humble, the most extreme, vulnerable situation. So here it is. So he's born homeless. He's rejected a place, his mother's rejected a place to deliver her baby in any kind of dwelling, really. His mother is a teenager. She's probably maybe 14, history writes about that, but she's very young, and it's scandalous. It's like, you can explain it all day long, but it's not logical that anybody's ever been born without a father. And so right from the beginning, he's a misunderstood individual. His family's misunderstood. They're peasants. They work with their hands. They're not educated. And he's the gift? Well, yeah, he is. And here he is. He goes out uneducated to uneducated people, which a lot of people in those days didn't go to school. They didn't read. And so he'd tell them stories. But anyway, he went out and he made all these friends that were real people. They were people that lived their life to get by and serve. And he was sent to a desert to fight his enemy. Like, some of us have had desert experiences. We know what that's a little bit like. He finds a way to make friends with all of the people that the king is not supposed to be with. The gift is not supposed to be with those people, with those, sinners, those tax collectors. He eats with them. He just doesn't go to them and say, here, drop off, I'm giving you some food. He actually sits, he goes into their homes. He lives an unbelievably humble life. That's how his life was wrapped up. That's the Christmas gift. He is judged, he's marginalized, he's criticized, and I'm sure along the way, being, God and human, he had to sit down a few times and along the way, or many times, and say, you know what, right now, I just can't take it all in. I need a little shock absorber for my soul here. And so he had a relationship with prayer, and he had a relationship with meditation. He had a relationship with getting alone to listen to his father. The king came as a gift, not what they expected. And religion, by the way, didn't recognize it. The religion, he ends up spending most of his life arguing with them. He left as a savior. He came back as a Lord. And he gave us all everything we need for every day and all of eternity. And so my encouragement today, accept him. He understands us. Whatever our brokenness is, whatever our story is, he always intended for us to be a gift to him, for us to be his child. He did it all to have a relationship with each one of us. He wants it. He wants us to be at home here and in heaven. So I've rewritten that little expression that says all you ever need, you'll never get what you want, and you'll always go after what you want. And here how it goes. It goes, you can never get enough of Jesus or your higher power. He is all we really need instead of wanting. But if you start out being vulnerable enough to say, you know what, I'm going to accept this is what I really need. I'll tell you what, down the road, you're going to be like, this is all I want and need. And that's a beautiful place. That's just not December 25th. That's for every day of our lives, one day at a time. I'll just end with this little card. It came, I like words. Anyway, and this card kind of send, I think, to close off. Love came to a stable on that very special night to bring us out of the darkness into the glorious light. Have a blessed Christmas. God bless.